Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at E-Residency of Estonia. If you're a globetrotting digital nomad, expat, freelancer, or somebody with a business, whether that's just you or an aspiring unicorn like some of the many other unicorns that have come out of Estonia, then look at E-Residency of Estonia the next time you're thinking about where to establish your business. E-Residency is a digital identity issued by the Republic of Estonia, which is in the European Union, to foreign nationals, that means non-Estonians, giving them digital access to the country's advanced online infrastructure and open business environment. And when I say advanced, I mean advanced. They've been doing digital for decades. E-residents can start a company 100% online from wherever they are in the world, run it remotely, open business bank accounts, and even submit their annual reports, all with their electronic ID card. It's literally international business without borders for location-independent entrepreneurs, perfect for the About Abroad audience. The next time you're thinking about where to establish your business, look at E-Residency of Estonia via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. My guest today is Kate Shifman. She is the founder of the Family Workation, where she is leaning on her experience as a third culture kid that has lived in the Ukraine, in America, currently calling Portugal home, and is curating these amazing experiences for this new generation of families with mobility, families that want to actually spend some time living in a foreign country for a short period of time, 30 days, relatively short, or more, and building out every detail that you need for it to be a fantastic experience, from connecting you with the local community to childcare and everything in between. It is really interesting, and it was really fun to see how her life has built up to this moment, connecting the dots from her childhood to what she's doing now, and how it all revolves around creating amazing experiences for families, children, parents, everyone alike around the world. I love it. It was super fun. Please help me in welcoming Kate to About Abroad. Kate, welcome to About Abroad. How are you today?
Hi, Chase. I'm well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored to be on this podcast. I'm a huge fan. So excuse me for being a little bit of a fangirl here. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, likewise. I've been following your work for some time and finally felt, you know what, I'm just going to reach out and see if this would be interesting for you. So I'm really glad that it is. I know you're super busy. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about the work that you're getting into. Before we get to the Family Workation, I would love to learn a little bit more about your past, because I have the feeling that there's a strong why behind why you've built the Family Workation. And I assume it has to do with some global exploits in your life. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about like where your roots are, where you're from, and how your life sort of transitioned to where you are today. If you can sort of summarize that for us.
Absolutely, yeah. And I draw a lot from my childhood and from my experiences growing up in different countries, for my work and for, as inspiration for what I'm doing. So I have a little bit of a unique story. I think I was a nomad before that was a thing. I grew up between post-communist Ukraine and the Upper East Side. And it happened.
The Upper East Side of New York.
Yes.
Not the Upper East Side of Ukraine.
No, there's only one Upper Side.
Wow, those are two extremes.
Yeah, so my father is a neuroscientist who moved to the US when I was 8 years old. And he had an arrangement with my mother that I would have to finish high school in the Ukraine before I could move to New York. And so to give me kind of a better experience, and be able to, still be connected with two parents and to open up the world to me. They had this really, I think, unique arrangement, especially, if we're thinking about the mid-90s, that I would fly to New York for the entire summer every year. And then for Thanksgiving, which is sort of the end of November, beginning of December. So twice a year, I would come to New York, spend time with my dad, and the rest of the time I was living in the Ukraine. So the experience of, such different cultures and such contrast really opened up my mind from age 8, and I knew that I wanted to live an international life. So that really, that really what shaped me. And then I lived, finally I moved to New York after high school. I lived there for a number of years. I fell in love and I moved to London for 5 years, as one does, in your 20s.
As one does, yes. Yep. As Kate does.
And then I moved back to New York. I lived there for a few more years, had the whole corporate career thing. Finally woke up one day. Well, it wasn't as, obviously as drastic, just in the interest of time. This sedentary life isn't for me. I was not interested in climbing the corporate ladder and, collecting titles and, living in concrete boxes. So I gave up the agency life and moved to Portugal. And now I'm living here for almost 5 years. And I'm building companies and products that help people live their lives more fully.
Wow. Wow, really following your dream there, and can totally see how the dots connect from early childhood to what you're doing today. And people can't see your face the way I can that are listening to the podcast, but I see your enthusiasm is super contagious for what you do, and it shines through in your social media life and your marketing and all that as well. But I know that there's a strong passion there. So that's super cool. I can't imagine a stronger dichotomy than post-communist Ukraine and Thanksgiving in New York City. that you're getting like the true American capitalist experience, and then you've got like post-communist Ukraine. How was that as a child, that like switching back and forth between those two uber different worlds?
It was at times confusing. It was extremely, extremely exciting. I remember the very first time I saw New York City and I fell in love. It's like, your first love. I remember, I think it was probably the first time I was coming, and my dad picked me up from the airport, and we were just driving over the Queensboro Bridge in the afternoon, and the entire panorama of the city unfolded in front of me. And that's it. I was sold. Like this was the universe unveiling itself in front of me. So so the opportunity that an international life provides is really what drives me. It's the world being open to you, and everything that comes with that, from connections to knowledge to experiences to smells to foods to just textures, everything. So for me, that is super, super exciting. And it was an overload of that in New York. And then I would go back to the Ukraine, and a very different experience. And a funny story, I think when I was maybe like 11 or something, I got into hip hop, because like that's what you do when you spend, a lot of your time in New York.
Yes.
Like it was also the 90s, 90s in New York, and so I would go back to the Ukraine, like in my high tops, baggy jeans, and like Naughty by Nature t-shirts. And people literally stopped on the road. Cars would stop and offer their opinion. They were like, what is all of this?
What would the common clothing look like for another kid your age there? Like, was there a stereotype like that? That's a perfect stereotype of what kids in the 90s were wearing. I was also rocking that kind of gear. What was someone in the Ukraine at similar age wearing at that time?
I think it was I don't know if they were really trends. They were just, everything was in flux in the country in general. So there were a lot of different things going on, but there weren't actual discernible trends. And definitely hip hop didn't come to the US until a little bit later. And girls, so as I'm sure Russian girls always dress very sexy, and I was never interested in that. And so when I saw that, the hip hop aesthetic, I was like, that resonates with me so much more, because it's more about who I am and what I look like, So instead of like wearing like super tight things and God knows what, I wore, the baggy jeans and high tops and all of that kind of stuff. So it was something nobody had seen before, for sure, in my hometown.
It's really interesting. I learned this in the last few years. It's interesting that I never really picked up on it before, but I grew up in the U.S. and we have, from the outside looking in, there's an apparent understanding that we're very individualistic in the U.S. We put a lot of value on being unique in a lot of different ways, like in the clothes that we wear and the style of our homes, and people like to distinguish themselves from other people more so than that's more important in the U.S. than it is in other cultures. So I can imagine you arriving to the U.S., seeing a lot of this individualism, and then taking what you attach to back to a place where that may not be as important, and being like a whoa, that is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's these kinds of cultural differences that I think make one's experience richer. And that's why it's so fun to live in different countries. I'm sure you've experienced this, that first moment, the first few weeks or months when you arrive in a new country, it's very different from the second month or the third month. It's kind of like this haze where you don't understand the language. You really don't know what's going on around you, but you're so enamored by everything because everything is a mystery.
Yeah. I would be really curious to ask you this. So I'm thinking about my question, this question that I'm going to ask from the perspective of people who might be listening, may be today parents with children considering a move abroad, right? And so I'm curious to hear when you put yourself back when you're 8, 10, 14 years old, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a kind of, this is what people refer to as third culture kid problems, right? When you're, not just the switching back and forth, but also you're now all of a sudden transplanted to this different world where, like you said, you don't speak the language, you don't have friends, you are different than the others because of your history. I mean, your languages you're speaking and the customs you're used to. So you stand out. So what were some of the challenges? They don't have to be horror stories necessarily, but just anything that you may warn those parents about, like, hey, just be cognizant of this for your kids.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the major things is the values and even the aesthetic and the traditions in your family versus outside the home. So there's several Instagram accounts about Russians in the US, and I know Iranians have the same because I have a lot of Iranian friends. So it's the same, what you do at home, what you eat at home, how you're supposed to behave at home, and all these cultural things. Your home country is preserved within your home, within your family. But then the moment you go outside the door, it's a completely different reality. So managing both is tricky, So for example, as a kid, you want to experience the food outside and you can say oh, I want burritos and I want burgers and I want this and that, you go home and your mom feeds you the traditional food and you don't want that because you want that shiny new thing, And what I would say is I think it's really important for families to go through the experience together rather than being separated by it. And it's a little bit tricky because kids learn the language much quicker. And also because they're in school right away. So kids are actually the first ones to enter the new society and the new environment, and they assimilate quicker. Parents usually follow behind a little bit. So it helps, I know in a lot of Russian families, the kids act as literal and cultural translators for the parents. And that can cause issues, but this can also, bring people together, bring the family together and help the family kind of move on to the next phase of their life together, but really integrate it into this new experience of this new country.
Yeah, it's super interesting. People always talk about how kids are like sponges, how they'll adapt super easily. And I talk to a lot of people who have, they're a family with young children who one person's from, let's say, Canada and the other's from Spain. And so the kid at 3 years old is speaking English and Spanish perfectly. And you're like, wow, they really do just learn and adapt so quick, and they'll switch back and forth with no problem. Meanwhile, mom or dad's trying to learn the other language and struggling through it and not to mention all the customary differences that the parents are trying to learn. It's really a super interesting dynamic that's becoming more and more normal. I don't know, growing up, I don't know if you felt this way going to New York, but like you know, New York's a bit of a bubble. It's a little bit different than the rest of the US, but like it didn't feel as normal to have these third culture kids in your life. There wasn't as much transientness, people just bouncing back and forth. Digital nomads weren't really a thing, you know, so it's becoming more and more normal. I've mentioned this on the show before. Like I look around my colleagues at Doist who are from 35 different countries, and a lot of the ones that are married with children, like a very high percentage of them are families with their parents are from two different backgrounds, you know, one country and another country. And now they have a child that speaks multiple languages. And this seems like normal now. Like it's not even a thing. So I don't know. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool. I have friends here. So for example, look, one of my best friends here, they're both English, the parents, and life took them to Mongolia, where they just decided to start a business. And their first child was born there. The second child was born, I think, in Singapore. Kids are now 7 and 9. And when I first came to their house here in Portugal, I saw all these notes in Chinese and I think Mongolian as well, all over the house. And I'm like, what is going on here? And they said, oh, yeah, we want to make sure that Ali doesn't forget Chinese, you know, and he loves to speak Mongolian once in a while. This kid is 9 years old. He speaks more languages than the four of us combined.
That is incredible. When people ask me where's the most unique place you've ever been in the world, I say Mongolia. I went on a quick trip there, and it is very, very interesting experience. But yeah, that is really interesting. I'm going to ask a super what may be an ignorant question, and so forgive me if it is, but I don't mind embarrassing myself a little bit here. You've mentioned several times here, you've referenced Russia, but you grew up in Ukraine. So can you connect those dots for us? Do you identify as Russian or Ukrainian, or is there any reason why there's a little bit of a gray area there that the common folk may not know?
Yes, I'm actually Russian Jewish, but I'm from the Ukraine. As you know, Ukraine was never really independent for more than, I think, like a handful of years in its entire history. So when I was born in the Soviet Union, and Russia is kind of like shorthand for me for the Soviet Union. Because I left kind of around the time Ukraine was forming as a country, I never connected with Ukraine as a sovereign country in my personal experience. And also, I have some Ukrainian genes, but it's mainly Russian Jewish. So for me, yeah, kind of like Russia is shorthand for like the old country, I would say. And identify as a New Yorker, as someone from Brooklyn. Yeah, it's a very unique identity.
It matters less and less, right? When people say like, where are you from? It's like the meaning behind that question just is continuing to lose value for a lot of people, because there is this more transient world that we're living in. And, you know, like I've spent the majority of my life in America, so I'm not one of the people that has any room to distinguish between growing up in America and, you know, the few years that I've spent in any given country. But I do just meet a lot of people who it's like, when you ask like, so like, where are you from? You know, just casual conversation. It's like, well, how long do you have?
That's just exactly what I say. Like, do you want the short story, the long story?
Yeah. It's like, I'm from Brooklyn. Like, okay, but you have a little bit of an accent. Well, okay. You want chapter 2?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is really fascinating, and I think it all ties in so closely with your work, which is super cool. You're currently living in Portugal, and so I would love to learn a little bit more about your current life in Portugal, where you are, and how that connects to the Family Workation.
Sure. Yeah. So I moved to Portugal around 5 years ago, you know, after kind of the whole corporate career thing. I, gave that up because I wasn't interested in climbing the corporate ladder. It wasn't meaningful for me. So I quit my job and moved to Portugal, and I spent my time trying to build products and solutions for people who want to live their lives more fully. So for me, that means having an international lifestyle, a lifestyle where you have an opportunity to connect with different countries and different people and different lifestyles. And as part of that is the company that I started this year. It's called the Family Workation. What we do is we offer families a chance to try out a life-centric experience for 30 days or more. We allow parents the opportunity to come to a different destination and try what it would be like to live there. We take care of all of the logistics to alleviate the anxiety and the time and research and everything, and and confusion that is inherent in essentially trying to move your entire family unit to a foreign country.
Which there are many logistics, even for just a single, for just one person. But when you start talking about moving kids and schools and, like you've got work to consider, I mean, there's so many logistics. It's insane. So you're tackling that for them.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I wanted to use this opportunity to announce a new service that we're just launching at the Family Workation. And so in addition to destinations, where we take a group of people to a destination, we're now launching a bespoke service. So we listen to our customers and our audiences and our friends and our kind of like circle of friends of the brand. And a lot of people want to go to a specific place. And rather than trying to pigeonhole them into the one destination that we've prepared for them, we're going to offer them an experience that they actually want. So people can come to us and say, hey, I want to try living in country X, and we will help them navigate all of logistics and essentially create a bespoke experience for them to go try to live in that country.
Wow.
And why we do this is because the whole idea behind this company is to help people break out of their structured, concrete box existence. So why would we put them in another box that we've created artificially? We want to give them the opportunity to try this lifestyle actually in the place that they really want to be in.
Yeah, the place they feel called to. So we'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers, so they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. So, that's amazing. Okay. So to distinguish between the two services, also, everybody, I don't know if you caught that, you heard it here first, the bespoke service is available now. And so we're going to distinguishing between the two main services. You have one, which is like you have some predetermined locations that are set up for families, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And those are like, describe that for us, like that. What does that look like? Are there multiple families? Is it one family? What does the properties look like? Like, what is the experience like for somebody that goes through this?
Yeah, so the destination we have right now is Bansko, Bulgaria, which I am sure you've heard about because it's becoming more and more popular with digital nomads. But it's also emerging as a really cool destination for families. We've seen families moving there in the last year or so from Texas, from the Netherlands, from Malta, from the UK, from everywhere. It's a very beautiful alpine village, about 2 hours from Greece and about 4 hours from Istanbul. So think day trips, weekend trips, and it's surrounded by incredibly beautiful mountains. You can have amazing, I think for families, really like the summer experience is really great because you have lakes, you have monasteries, you have hiking and biking and just such an amazing array outdoor experiences that you can have with your family. It is also a very affordable cost of living, so families can essentially leverage geo arbitrage and spend less time working and more time living and more time experiencing a life with with their children. So we take them on an experience. It's 10 families. It's a little bit small, but I'd rather do it right for 10 families than have more families and maybe not everyone has a good experience. So essentially we take 10 families and we arrange accommodation, childcare, and co-working, and we plug them into the community, the existing community of international families in Banksko.
Whoa, amazing. So they get kind of like a plug and play experience. Like they just say, Family Workation, Kate, we want to go on the trip. We'll buy the tickets. Let us know everything else from there.
Exactly. Yeah. They just have to show up.
Are they generally working like as well, or is it like vacation?
Yeah. So the idea is for this to be a first step into a location independent lifestyle. So this is not a vacation. This is not a getaway. I really want for people to try what it would be like to live this life. So we have a co-working space for them. We have beautiful area that we've set up as a creche. For the kids, we will have childcare coordinators for the kids that are a little bit younger, so like up until about school age. And then we have a couple of rooms for the kids that are school age if they have distance learning, so they essentially have their own like co-working space.
Well, kids have co-working spaces these days, man. We have really moved forward. And what age are the kids generally? Is there sort of a norm there? I mean, do they tend to be younger, or are they like, do people show up with 17-year-olds too? I mean, what does that look like?
We've had some interest from parents of older kids, teenagers. It's a little bit difficult to have a very wide range, right? So we try to focus on kind of like, toddlers to maybe school age, because that way we can have them play together. The older kids can kind of like take care of the younger kids. They have their childcare coordinators with them, but someone who's 3 and 7, it's a little bit easier than when you have like a bunch of 16-year-olds there. So the needs are completely different, the schedules, the energy levels, everything. So for this experience, we're really trying to have people that are around sort of between 0 to like 8-year-old kids.
Nice. And so when the parents come over, are they looking to eventually settle in this place, or is it more like are they looking to move to the Balkans, to Bulgaria, or are they more like, I'm just going to do this for 30 days, then go back? Maybe we do this once a year or something. Is there a sort of cadence there?
Most people have never heard of banks.
Yeah.
So it's something that, we're really having to, to present to people who look, there's a beautiful place. It's kind of like, in terms of the intention, it's kind of like 50-50. So the families who are already nomadic or expat families, they're already living this lifestyle. They want to try this particular experience or this particular destination. And then what I call sedentary families, more traditional families, they want to, they may or may not decide to follow this path in the future. They can now work remotely, and they've been locked up in the house for nearly 2 years. So they definitely want to try this. More likely than not, this is going to be something they may do once a year, and then they go back to their city lives, which is perfectly fine. Like as long as people are happy and fulfilled, I don't care, how they set up their lives. If I give them the opportunity to try this and they enjoy it, they can go on to live their life all over the world, or they can go back to their hometowns and then come on the next experience.
Love it. What? How did you choose Banksko? Like, of all the places in the world, you're living in Portugal. Portugal's another beautiful destination. For people that don't really know about Bulgaria, I mean, it is a very much so like an up and coming destination. I'd say Bulgaria and Georgia and Albania are like 3 places that were not on the radar 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now people are flocking to them because, as somebody put it to me recently, it's like Greece without the prices in a lot of ways. Like you have, for instance, in Georgia, you have some of the tallest mountains. I think the tallest mountains, like taller than the Alps, for instance. And like, so people are realizing, like, we're waking up and going, oh, wait, I could go to Switzerland, or I could go to Georgia for 1/15 of the price and get even bigger, more beautiful mountains, rich culture and history. So anyway, I asked the question not because I question the decision to go there, but it's a big world. You could have picked any location. So why is it so intriguing to go to this part of Bulgaria?
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about Banksko like 6 months ago. I was invited to join the Nomad Fest, which happens in Banksko in July. So as I'm sure you know, there's a guy called Matthias who, together with his partner Uwe, created a nomad community in Banksko. think in 2015. And the idea is exactly as you described, you have incredibly beautiful mountains and a very, very beautiful little town. So it's an alpine village on an Eastern European budget.
That's a great tagline.
Right, exactly. It's super beautiful. It's really friendly. The food is amazing. The skiing is amazing. All the natural activities, all the outdoor activities, and you can have this at a fraction of the price that you would pay for a similar experience and a better known place. So if we are looking to create an experience that allows families to live a life-centric lifestyle versus a work-centric lifestyle, then we want it to be in a place where they can work less and have a better lifestyle and have more time to spend with their families. So the geo arbitrage is imperative to create this lifestyle for families, which is why banks go. It is also a really family-friendly place. I was actually shocked in a very good way at how many families I just saw around both times I've been there in July and recently in September. On any day, weekend or weekday, you just have so many families with little kids, older kids, infants just everywhere. There's lots of parks, lots of public spaces and squares and little cafes where you have locals and expat kids mingling together, playing together. It's a very friendly place, and it's a place that's really conducive to raising a family. And I think this is why parents, more kind of forward-thinking parents have been moving there, over the last year or so. And I see the community growing. So I really saw this as a family destination. And so this is why we decided to go there.
I'm loving it. It sounds so idyllic. Can you compare it? Like what size is it? I don't know if you know the population or is there anywhere you could compare it to that people might be able to draw some a vision of what it looks like? I don't know if by little village we're talking 500 people or 10,000 or you identify as
size,
10,000. Okay. You identify as a New Yorker, so you might be a little village of 1 million,
It's a town. It has a very, very, very beautiful, old historic town center with these amazing chalets and, beautiful, old restaurants and this, huge tower with a bell and everything. So
it has to have a bell.
Street.
There better be a bell. I mean, it better have a beautiful bell.
Absolutely, and cobblestone streets and everything. And then there's the new part of Bansko, which is closer to the skiing area. It's kind of they call it uptown, just purely because you have to walk up the hill to get there. And there's lots of new developments there, all centered around the ski area. And so that area is super popular in the winter, but in the summer, the downtown area, which is down the hill, the historical center area is just beautiful. And you have, these old beautiful trees and parks and just so many wonderful, little environments for families to hang out and enjoy their time.
Wow. Where do you fly into? What's the route to get there generally?
I have to fly into the capital, which is Sofia, and then it's a 2-hour drive to Bansko. But it's
you guys organize that?
Car. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we would organize shuttles. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
We're also trying to be sustainable and not having people rent private cars.
Yeah. That's I'm also facing that challenge with some stuff at work, coordinating our co-located events, trying to make it as sustainable as possible. And that's one of the big things is the transportation. And when you say, so you said 10 families going to this village, are you curating a giant villa that they're all living in together, or do they each have separate accommodations, or what does that community look like?
Yeah, so we've partnered with a local property provider. It's actually such an amazing setup because they own a small hotel, but they also own residential buildings on the same plot as the hotel. So the hotel has what used to be a huge restaurant, and now we're transforming it into the crash area. Upstairs from the hotel, we have an entire floor with studios. So that's specifically for single parents, where you have a studio for you, and across the hall, you have your own private living/working space. And then the residential buildings next door have apartments, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, which will be rented to families. So if you're basically just the two of you, a parent and a child, then you can stay in the studio and it's more cost efficient and you have your own space there. And then if you need a little bit more space, then we have 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And it's within the same development. There's an internal courtyard where they can do yoga and activities and everything. There's nature all around. So it's, in a way, it's a closed environment. There's a fence. It's a very thin fence. You don't feel like you're inside a jail, but there's a fence in the sense that the kids can actually run around in the playground and in the common courtyard area. And as a parent, like you don't care. They're not going to go on the road, So we're very, very lucky to have found a really good partner, local partner, to allow us to have this experience.
Wow. It sounds great. I'm also interested in something you mentioned. You talked about plugging them into the local community. So what does that look like in practice?
Yeah. So there is a circle of international parents and families in Bangsko. When I went there, I met most of them. They're super happy about more families coming in. So we organize experiences. We organize, co-working. So one of the families, they're from the UK. They own a couple of co-working spaces in town. So by putting our parents there, they're already connecting with the community. There's another amazing space that opened up recently called the Bangsko Lab, and so they have a really great program where they get local Bulgarian kids together with expat kids, and they have activities like different kinds of like workshops and classes. So creating these opportunities to connect over activities, I think is really great. I think it's a very natural, organic way to get people together.
I want to go. Can I sign up? Do I have to bring a kid? I'll bring my nephew or something. I want to go. This sounds amazing. I love it. It's a really fun experience for everyone involved. I feel like whether you want to dip your toe in the water and just try this lifestyle out a little bit, or if you're looking to make it long term, or if you're already a seasoned veteran of the traveling family game, that sounds so great. It's really amazing. I particularly like that there's an emphasis on the kind of cross collaboration of not just the expats with the other expats, but mixing with the Bulgarian people. Do you know off the top of your head, like if foreigners want to settle, like if they like it there, there's obviously a group of expats living there. Is it a fairly easy process? Like, is there a path to staying long-term in Bulgaria?
I don't know the details because I never looked into it, but I know that there is. There's quite a few nomads who have come to Bangsko because they wanted to, experience the community, and they've bought property there and they've sorted out residency. Actually, one of the founders of Co-working Bangsko who has a business where he helps people figure that out. So after our interview, I will drop you a link. I'm sure he has I'll just message him and ask him, hey, how can people get in touch with you? And maybe we can add it, to the show notes so that people who are interested could directly talk to him.
Yeah, we'll do that.
There's definitely a way. Yeah.
Maybe we'll also get him on the show to go into that as well. I think there might be some people interested in Bangsko. Mm-hmm. I'm raising my hand right now. So that sounds super, super cool. I'm loving I mean, I've mentioned this on this show countless times, probably annoying for anybody listening, but like, I love the cheesy little beautiful quintessential mountain village with the Alps or the mountains in the background. And so I'm sold very easily. And it's funny, my wife and I have said, like, as we've traveled, especially over the last few years, we kind of stopped traveling to cities so much and really wanted to explore more of those like third tier towns and villages and the natural beautiful areas of Europe and anywhere that we are, really. And we always come across these super cool little quintessential beautiful towns. They're often like mountain towns, but they could be little beach villages too, but they're just like kind of dead a little bit. Like there's no youth there. There's no co-working space. There's no cool coffee shops or bars. It's just aesthetically, it's beautiful. There's these stone buildings and, like you said, little plazas with, bell towers and beautiful natural scenery around. And we always go, man, if you could just get like 1,000 people to live here that were all of like a similar mindset, like you would have such a wonderful place to call home. And it sounds like this is kind of what's happened here in Bangsko.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of conversations now, both from kind of the EU, the European Commission, and kind of like from the top, but also from the community, from people about revitalizing these kinds of rural environments. The whole idea of like eco villages and setting them up in these, towns that are either dying out or have already died, and revitalizing them and bringing, new fresh energy into those environments. I think it's great. I think it's super important. And I think in a way, recycling the architecture, recycling the the places and giving them a new life is great, and whoever is still left there, this is in a way a completely new experience and an opportunity for people to stay in the place they love instead of having to move away, move to the city, move to another country, move someplace else from the place they love just in order to be able to support themselves. So I really hope to see more of this over the coming years. It's a very big topic. It's a huge undertaking, and it's incredibly difficult to renovate at that scale. But I really hope that it does happen, and I hope there are some dreamers that will make this happen.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the quote unquote like remote work movement is this idea that people have been sort of forced to live in cities. Like a lot of people like living in big cities, and that's totally fine. But a lot of people are sort of forced there, or they put up with it because it's like, well, that's where the jobs are. And so as that gets democratized and opportunity becomes locationless, what will people choose to do? There will certainly be a percentage that say, no, I like Manhattan. I like downtown London. I don't want to go anywhere else. But there will be a big percentage also that says, I want to go to the quintessential mountain village. I want to live in the countryside. I want to go back to where my roots are from. I think we both know Nacho Rodriguez from Re People in the Canary Islands. Like that was his thing. He was in Boston and loved working in Boston, but he was like, I'm from this little island off the coast of Spain, which is a paradise. I want to go back there where my roots are, but there's no culture there in terms of like internationalism and meeting up with other entrepreneurs and stuff. And so they've created that there. And anyway, I just see this exploding like across the globe over the next 10 years where you don't have to live in cities anymore. You can really choose where you want to live. And when people make the choice to go back to their roots or find little villages and revitalize them, there's countless projects going on right now to do this. It's really cool to think about how it can serve those communities.
Yeah, and I think actually that will also make cities better because cities are overcrowded. That's the main problem. I mean, it's just not a pleasant experience to live in most, let's say first tier cities at this point. So if we unload them a little bit, there's more room for everyone to enjoy the city. There's less pollution. There's less traffic. It's more environmentally friendly. You can make cities more pedestrian if you have essentially fewer cars and fewer people. And I think it's best for cities. And also, then you're starting to look at second and third tier cities and towns. And so this opportunity, to work from anywhere that you're no longer tied to your job is amazing because people may want to have a little bit more life than just a rural village. But there was never really, unless you're in a very specific industry, it's been very, very difficult to choose where you live. So if you, for example, want to live, I don't know, in Philadelphia, but you don't do anything with research or healthcare or, the industries that are dominant there, then you're like, what am I going to do there? But you can move there. Like there's a movement of people buying up properties in Philly and moving from New York to Philly, and they still work either in New York or anywhere else, So you can really pick and choose. And so that helps other cities rise up. And I think that is a much better way to distribute wealth around, across the world and across the country.
Yeah, you're also seeing it happen with people moving from like San Francisco, most expensive place in the United States right now, to places like Texas. And it's like the big migration from Silicon Valley to Texas. And yeah, it's happening in a bunch of ways. There's also like here in Spain, there's a big thing with up in the northwest corner. There's an area it called Galicia, and Galicia it's got a ton of those little like decrepit villages. They used to be little small towns of like 15 buildings that are being bought for pennies and essentially converted back into towns. And they're putting in fiber optic cable and allowing high speed Wi-Fi. And it's like, think about how cool that is. Like these little towns that have died are literally being brought back to life. And meanwhile, the closest big city is being depopulated a little bit, and the people that stay there are going to live better lives. Like it's a win-win-win. And anyway, we got off topic a little bit because I wanted to come back to the Family Workation and the bespoke experience before we let you go here. So Just tell us a little bit about what the bespoke experience might look like for the family that says, that sounds cool in Bulgaria. I might want to do that, but I've really had my eye on XYZ country. What does that process look like?
Yeah, sure. So families can sign up as a single family or with their friends. And what we do is we'll do a discovery call. We'll find out where they want to go, how long they want to go for, how old their kids are, and what their kind of needs and desires are. Then we'll go into that city and research, options. We'll come back to them with three options: high, medium, low in terms of pricing. Everything includes accommodation, childcare, and coworking. And then depending on whether or not the city has an existing community of international families, we'll obviously research that and find out ways how we can connect them. But sometimes it could be like a totally random place, and that's not the case there. So essentially, then we'll have another call. We'll present these options, and we will, they will choose what it is they want to go for. At that point, they pay a small deposit, to secure the program, and we go ahead and we book everything. We then, get them into the place, provide any necessary, shuttles, whatever it is, depending how remote it is. But essentially, they will be picked up at the airport and taken to the place, because the last thing you want to do is figure out in the new country with a new language, well jet lagged, how to get to where you want to just put your head on the pillow. So we really want to create the experience that helps them enjoy without being detracted by the confusion of it all. And then once they're there, they will know exactly how childcare would start, where it is, how to get there, and the co-working, the same thing. And then if there is an existing community of international families, then we will have already, connected with them and maybe set up a welcome dinner, welcome drinks, for the family there.
So nice. So nice. I was curious about something with both experiences that just came to mind. You mentioned distance learning before for the kids, so that leads me to believe that sometimes the parents are doing this during the school year. Is that the case, or do they tend to do this during the summer months when the kids are off, for instance?
Well, I think it's going to be much easier for parents to try this out during school vacation. But this is kind of the traditional families who are living their traditional city lives. I have a lot of families who are expats and nomads who are also interested in this experience. So they're already doing distance learning. So this is why, for the kids that have that need, we'll obviously set up, their own space for them to learn.
Nice. Very cool. It sounds fantastic. If I had kids, I would be signing up right now, I think, but maybe I'll just see you in Bulgaria as a solo traveler. My wife and I. Maybe we'll bring our dog. That'll be the closest we can do.
Perfect.
No, it sounds amazing. Kate, do we miss anything? Is there anything else that people should know? We're gonna before we sign off, we'll give you a chance to list all the links, and we will to go to, and we'll put all that in the show notes. But before we get to that, did I miss anything? Anything else you think is important to know about the program or traveling with families, the future of work, whatever? Feel free to drop that in here.
I just wanted to invite families in particular to try out a life-centric lifestyle. We have been conditioned for, the last 100 years or so to prioritize work and to put ourselves in concrete boxes, but it's no longer necessary. It was never necessary in the first place, but we were kind of duped into the whole thing. Opportunity to try a completely different life. And I think this is going to be amazing for try out a life that is focused on the experience of connection and the experience of growth and the experience of love and kindness. And there's no better way to do that than to take your family to a place where you can spend more time with them while also connecting to other humans living there.
I couldn't agree more. It's the best form of education, I think. I mean, I've learned so much about myself through travels and through living in different places, and it's a common theme on this show. Everybody that I talk to that's ventured abroad solo or with a family has nothing but good things to say. Of course, there are some challenges along the way, but everybody says, I would never change it for anything. The kids are getting a great experience. You're building great traditions and experiences with your family. And there's nothing wrong with going against the grain and trying something that's a little bit outside the box. Just because it's what people have been doing for the last 100 years doesn't mean you have to keep going down the same path, especially if you feel called to do this kind of thing, but you think you're trapped and you can't, which I think is the case for a lot of people. They think, oh, well, I can't do this. I'll travel when the kids go off to college, or I'll travel when I retire. And then you spend, your whole life waiting for that moment. And the moment is here. You can do it now. Thank you so much, Kate. Where can people find you? Again, we'll link to it in the show notes, but while people are listening, what are the best places to follow along you and the Family Workation?
Yeah, so thefamilyworkation.com is our website. I'll also have the URL for you for the bespoke experience. We're just putting finishing touches on that section of the website. Instagram is at the Family Workation. Yeah, the same thing. LinkedIn and Facebook. It's all, if you search for the Family Workation, you will find us everywhere.
That's fantastic. All right, great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this. I hope to see you in Bulgaria. I'm certainly intrigued now. Great talking to you, Kate. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.